So here we go. We're live. Namaste, the star, Howard. Hope you guys are all well. I hope you guys are all thriving. Hope you are having an absolutely fantasticular and awesome day, awesome week, awesome month. And yeah, man, life has been pretty fascinating and exciting through the times of what's going on here. I hope you are all ready for a little bit of a fun tickle. It was a lastminute.com idea to just pop on here and just do a little bit of a tongue wag, something that was sort of niggling at the back of my mind. And I thought, you know what the heck, just pop on. So it's not going to be a long one, but I think it's going to be a slightly focused one, because when I am here, I do tend to be able to focus a little bit more. It's still going to be, off the cuff and flying with the seat of my pants, because it's the only way I know to fly. But we'll give it a few minutes for a few people to sort of arrive, and hopefully we'll have a few more people arriving. Bolenat, big love from Pakistan. Kaha hai Pakistan hoga? Where about are you in Pakistan? I've been to Karachi. I did actually enjoy Karachi. I mean, it's a bit of a messy place, but the people were amazing. I will never forget the hospitality that I experienced in Karachi. Wow. Beautiful people. And the food. I was very impressed with the food in Karachi, I must admit. I love the way they use their cumin. They use more cumin in the food than in India. Namaste, Edward. How are you doing? Hope you're well. Hope you're thriving. Hope everybody is just happy and having a great day. It is a very special day. What's special about today? It's Gurua. It's Thursday. But we're also sort of at like that interesting point where the moon is dancing between. Big love. Namaste, D-Love. How are you doing? Hope you guys are well. Okay, so what are we going to be talking about today? We're going to be talking about the Shaman Path, soul energy and manifestation. And what a conversation. I'm going to start this off by just expressing how I feel about what is passed off as manifestation as a general rule. And I'm just going to open this YouTube in the background so I can see what I wrote. Because if I see what I wrote, then I know what I'm talking about. Does that sound funny? I find that for me works best, having a good idea of what it is I'm about. But yeah, I do think that like what passes for manifestation in modern day and age is all about the Hermetic principle of mentalism, or it's a 1, 2, 3 simple. This is how it's done, but people forget. Yeah, what a beautiful surprise! I was as surprised as you were, D-Love. I'm surprised to be here. I was like, wow, and I actually set it up for a half an hour ago, or so I thought. But then by the time I clicked start, I realized that the time was actually I'd reset it. Come out and gone back in again, and it had reset till half an hour later, and I was like, oh, the thumbnail doesn't match. I thought, screw it, you know what, I'll just go here and do it and see what happens. People will probably figure out if they come. There'd be a ticket timer running down. I'm counting down 30 minutes. But yeah, so what passes as manifestation is something that really troubles me. The reason, and many of you might know this, some of you might not, the reason I started podcasting was because originally I had seen a discussion where people were talking about the etheric and the astral as if it were just synonyms. And I was like, hold on. And these were like well-known people. What's that big well-known guru? I forget his name. Everybody's listened to him so much from India. I saw him say it, and I saw other people say, oh, seriously, these people must know better. Are they trying to like trick people into believing something weird because it doesn't add up for me? And yeah, I mean, this the imagination is, in fact, that's a good point. It's a good place to start. The nature of reality is imagination, right? If we think about what's happening in our brains, which is our physical dream time that we're experiencing here as a finite sort of solid reality, the hard ground underneath our feet. This is created by our brains, this experience. It's obviously the parietal lobes, which facilitates this process, which is basically the same part of the brain that we dream with. So that's important to notice. And obviously the pineal gland has got a lot of input in the coding of the information, because all the information gets routed through the thalamus, which is where the pineal gland lives. It's a little pimple on the thalamus. And so there's processing of the information from all of the senses except for smell. So much of our reality is, processed, reprocessed, recoded, and sent to the parietal lobes to be experienced as a dream. And so the nature of dreamtime reality. Namaste, Sunuka. Sunuk, how are you doing? I hope you're well. I hope you're thriving. Hope you're happy. Hope you're having a great day and a great week, man. We're going to be here with Jeremy tomorrow. We're going to be having a slightly more politically heated conversation. Karen Barrio, namaste, big love. Oh, thank you. Oh yeah, people like and share. I forget to say that. But yeah, the very nature of this reality is then sculpted by our imagination, because the image, the ability to create an image. So this has got to do with the Pingala, right? The ability to formulate an image is very much a Pingala related concept, and happens through the activities of the Pingala, where the qualities that are imbued into that image are very much the Ida. Namaste, Freya. How are you? Hope you're good. Hope you're happy. Hope you're well. So when we look at this in a slightly more sort of, really like look under the hood, as it were, we start to notice that there's definitely some kind of a process happening within our imagination that actually creates reality. The reality that we're living in, which means that the entire universe that we're living in is really manifested through our imagination. And this process is obviously is the soul's activity of experience. And so we tend to overcomplicate everything. We want to separate time from space, because they're two separate things, different things. Oh, really? Time and space, different, really? Oh, right. The same way we want to separate light from sound, like they're two different things. Different things, really? I thought they're just a different pitch or harmonic frequency of the same thing, right? Vibration. At this particular frequency is sound, and at this particular frequency is light, right? But sound and light are really no different. In fact, you can take sound and turn it into light if you speed up the frequencies. And if you slow down the frequencies of light, you will turn it into sound, right? So it's the same thing, just different harmonics. And so time and space, there's something similar happening. Yeah, it's the same thing, just a different scale of the sameness, if you will. And so we tend to, ooh la la, baby. Cocoa. Oh, I had a cocoa while I was waiting, by the way. Okay, so let's get the mouse out of the way. Let's crank up a little bit of frankincense. I always think better when I got some frankincense on the go. And those of you that have frankincense, you ought to be cranking it up. There is no thing better than smudging your space. I'll tell you that much. What is this? That is copal. That's copal. That is frankincense. We're rolling with frankincense, ladies and gentlemen. This is the frankincense party. And balancing that on there is just asking for trouble. I dropped a cup of cocoa off this table last night. Got to be careful. And while I was talking to my girlfriend, or just before I actually spoke to her, I was actually calling her when it fell off. And not much fun. Not much fun at all. Yeah. It means somebody's got to go and clean up the floor. And right here, it's nighttime, so it's not a nice time to have to clean the floor. There are better times to do it. The daytime is much better time for cleaning. So yeah, this whole notion of consciousness being separate to matter is something that I literally take offense to, the idea, personally. I don't get offended by people believing it, but the idea to me makes my head spin. So I can't digest that idea because I see matter as consciousness. I experience consciousness, and to me, that's matter. Even our thoughts are a different frequency of matter. So everything is essentially matter. And further than that, it doesn't matter. The whole darn thing is one big thing. So I tend to, namaste, dear Carly, how are you doing? You had crazy dreams last night. I did say about the moon. The moon is on fire. So we had a new moon in Taurus, right? When's full moon exactly? When's full moon exactly? They don't say the time. 10:45 SAST AM. So we are we're almost 2 days away from full moon, right? Almost 2 days away from full moon, which is in the time of Gemini. So we go opposite Gemini, right? And Sagittarius, and then we've got to go before Sagittarius. So that means the moon must be in Scorpio. Is the moon in Scorpio now? Oh, wow. That would explain your intense dreams. Is that right? Let me double check my brain calculations. Moon in Scorpio now? I think it must be. Yeah, moon in Scorpio today, it says. Oh, gosh. Well, I think that would make a lot of sense because May the 28th, waxing gibbous in Scorpio. Yeah. So the old brain is still working, ladies and gentlemen. The old brain is still working. I like to do these things myself. I don't like to let AI do everything for me. We can keep track of the moon and its signs by our own mental cognition if we choose to. And these little mental exercises keep us sharp because they keep the imagination active. And it's a blue moon. Yeah, exactly. So moon in Scorpio is pretty intense considering right now where we are, right? With the Mars has been like firing up in the beginning of this month. So Scorpio is getting a full tilt release of really intense, passionate, occult energy. Hence, here I am having this conversation about the occult and manifestation, which is like, it couldn't really be much more Scorpio, could it? Really, if you get right down to it. So manifestation, yeah, this whole notion that time and space are separate, this whole notion that consciousness and matter are separate, are things that I think we've got to question. And if you will, step out of that paradigm for those that are coming to watch, for those that are new, passerbys, if I shall say, consider for a moment if time were the condensed space. In other words, you have space, right? But then you have layers of space. And the movement through these layers of space we could consider as time. And moving through these layers of space is time. And the space is stacked 3 dimensions onto 3 dimensions like a tesseract, but stacked and stacked and stacked and stacked and stacked and stacked and stacked almost infinitely. So we are experiencing movement of this tesseract spinning, and the way that it spins brings different elements of the space into play, which is what we're experiencing as change and movement and time. And if we can imagine this for a moment, we can imagine that consciousness is matter, right? Because this whole space and the movement of space is really just the revolutions of consciousness, the oscillations of the consciousness field. And this field of consciousness is oscillating And the oscillations are what we experience as the space and the time. And then our brain gets hold of this and forms a dream out of this and puts us into this proverbial dream of dimensional solid space. And so now we're experiencing it. Now, what does this mean about manifestation? It means that the entire physical universe as we know it is being manifested by our imagination. We are already manifesting right here, right now. And so it's not a question of learning to manifest. This is the thing. We are already manifesting, whether we like it or not. We can manifest good things or we can manifest bad things. We can manifest our fears or we can manifest our joys and our dreams of positivity. But it's not quite as simple as just, I want that to happen or I don't want that to happen. It's not really that simple. There's some complexity to it because we're imagining that we're conscious beings, which we are, but we're not taking into account that we are also unconscious beings. And so our unconscious will create a trough where we create a hill. So if our mind produces a hill, then the trough produced by that hill will be the unconscious, and they will be canceling each other out to a certain degree. And when we're in denial flows with the life force. And when we are in denial of the flowing life force, that is when the consciousness field is contracting and we are starting to lose touch with that flow. And that's when the manifestation starts to move into our unconscious zones, and we start to unconsciously, through our shadows, manifest our fears, our negative desires and such. And sometimes that's meant to be that way. We can't always avoid it. It's sometimes fundamentally has to be what it has to be. So, this whole idea of manifestation is just about holding intention. Yeah, manifestation is about holding intention. But that's not where manifestation ends. That's just one element of manifestation. And as one element of manifestation, it has relevance, but it's not the subtotality of the relevance. You got them Lemurian crystals activated. Namaste, how are you doing? I hope you're good. Hope you're well. Lemurian crystals. I'm actually wearing my Moldavite. It's on my kanti. So I do love my Moldavite. I've got quite a bit of Moldavite. I've got other bits of Moldavite. I might deck myself out in Moldavite sometime. Like have a Moldavite crown and just wear Moldavite everywhere. I do that every once in a while when I want to blow my mind. What have I got here with me? That's actually a good question. What crystals? Put them all over my desk. I'm particularly feeling very drawn to this little scepter wand of amethyst. This is a Himalayan, beautiful Himalayan extraterrestrial. The extraterrestrial. This is a golden healer, double terminate. I love this golden healer. Very beautiful. But I feel I tend to. This is a Tao. This is a Tao stone, but it's a citrine, a natural citrine, unbaked. This is a beautiful amethyst, but not just an amethyst. It's from a Brandberg amethyst. This is very particular amethyst. I got this one from my girlfriend, actually. So you're right. Let's get the stones activated. Let's start dreaming into the unconscious. So the Shaman Path, how does this relate to the Shamanic Path? The Shamanic Path is about bringing together the different fields of dream time, bringing them together in such a way that we are able to synergize. Yeah. And that act of synergizing, why is this doing this? It's creating like a space at the bottom here. You can't post comments to some destinations. Why would I not be able to post comments to some destinations? Why doesn't it tell me? Learn more. LinkedIn info. Okay. So maybe I shouldn't be putting it on LinkedIn. That's interesting. YouTube, Twitch, StreamYard, Air. Okay. Interesting. Kick. I don't use Kick. Do any of you guys watch Kick? Are any of you guys rolling with the Kick machine? Kick. I just don't get my kicks with any kicks. So yeah, this idea that we are able to manifest just by holding an intention. I'm sorry, that bubble, I have to burst it, right? Holding an intention is part of manifestation. Action is part of manifestation, but there's a deeper part of manifestation which is in the unconscious, and this is where the shamanic work comes into play, the shamanic path, because the shaman law is all about engaging with the unconscious and going into the shadow. Well, it's one part of it, and traveling through the unconscious to the three different domains within, and those three different domains are the fundamental substance of creation. And so the astral, the etheric, and the akashic, or the causal plane, effectively. And when we're looking at these different elements, these different features of the consciousness field that we are experiencing as matter, the holding the intention is very important, because understand what intention is, right? We are literally talking about tension. Let's just look at an intention. So intention is tension. Okay. We're not talking about pretension. We're not talking about detention, right? We're talking about tension, but the tension within, the intention. So we need to hold tension. And there's something to think about. What are we tensing? What is being tensed? What is this tension? I'd like to think of tension as pressure. What is pressure, right? Is to press, to shore, to press the shore. What is the shore? The shore of the sea. You go to the ocean, and there is the shore where the water meets the ground. And where the water meets the earth, there's a certain amount of pressure, right? So the pre-shore, that's the waters on the outer rim of the field of watery potential, if we want to look at it in such a way. So we're talking about pressure, and we're talking about the contraction that happens where that water is meeting a solid substance, and it is reverberating off of that solid substance due to a difference of vibrational frequency. We experience this as pressure. So when we think about this, right, this pressure is the source of the tension. And to hold this tension inside is to hold this pressure. Now, pressure represents, obviously, contraction, right? Because contraction produces this. And, I'm going to do it. Yeah, come on, people. He's going to do it. Can you see it? Can you see what he's going to do? Oh, my gosh. Ladies and gentlemen, he's going to do it. I just can't go a day without looking at the pretty pictures. I want to see some pretty pictures. So when we're talking about pressure, we're talking about contraction. We're talking about, nailed it, baby, Saturn. So when we're looking at Saturn, and I may as well grab another image while I'm standing here listening and talking to you. And I know what, excuse me, ladies and gentlemen, we've just had Elvis has left the building. Did Elvis really leave the building? The thought of Elvis leaving the building is a disturbing thought. So when we look at this Saturn square, right, we can see how it represents pressure. The pressure is on number 5, right? It's the center. And you can notice that the pressure is also on number 8 and number 2. That's really important. The potential number 2 is contracting into number 8. So the 8 and the 2 are revolving. It's a revolution around the central axis, which is the 4, 5, and the 6, right? And so number 5 becomes the concentration of pressure. This is why when we think about money, for example, right? Money might be related to Saturn, but when we consider what it represents, right, or where it moves through number 5, Mercury, because Mercury is mercantile. Mercury is how money gets exchanged, right? And notice with the word money, just to bring it back a moment, it has in it implicit the moon. Notice how number 2 and number 8 are in harmony with each other, right? And so it's a dance of the potentials between 2 and 8. So 2 is the receptive element, and 8 is the outward projective element of what we could call the mani. Ni represents the Muladhara chakra. Yeah. This is the root element of earth. Ma, the mother, represents the sacral plexus chakra, Svadhisthana chakra. That's got to do with the element of water. So we're talking about Mani. We're talking about how water meets earth. Are we seeing a correlation yet to what I'm talking about when I use the analogy of the ocean, of the place close to where the water meets the earth, right? That Saturn square is giving us a hint to this knowledge that I'm speaking of here. And so to understand that Saturn square is to get an insight into the way in which the consciousness field, which, and I want to be sure to point out that the consciousness field is the expression of the soul. The soul is expressing energy, and the energy expressed through the soul is a conduit, and that conduit is the consciousness field. So the consciousness field is what we're in, but it is the soul that is expressing this potential. Without the soul, nothing would be here, right? That's why we say it's the soul. Why? Because the soul is the bottom part that touches the ground. Everything rests upon the soul. When you're standing up, your entire body's pressure, right? Pressure is upon the soul. When you move your body, it's the sole of your feet that has to move all the energy that sends a wave up your spine, up your leg, up your arm to cause your finger to move, to cause your hand to move. It's all related to that, unless you're in a sitting position, at which point you're closing certain channels from the earth. But the getting back to the idea here with the Saturn square between the element of water and the element of earth, this is what we are being shown here with the Saturn square, and this is the 8 and the 2. And the 2 represents the potential. Water is an endless field of potential, right? It can potentially move, always expressing the potential to move, gravity. It's always changing shape. It's always adjusting. It's always reacting and compensating. That's a good word for the element of water, compensation. And so when we speak about money, we speak about compensation. This is not an accident. This has got to do with the number 5 in the middle, which is the conduit between the compensation of number 2, Isis, the dollar. The dollar is a particular element of money. It's not just money. It's the moon's element of ma, receiving, ma. It causes desire to come into the picture because it's the ma chakra. The ma, the Svadhisthana, holds the seed of this element of desire and expresses the desire, which is the 6th principle of Hermes, which is the cause and effect, right? Desire is an addiction to particular effects and wanting to trigger causes to bring the effects that we want. So desire is linked to the 6th principle of Hermes. And obviously the element of Mars is what drives this desire. Yeah? Because Mars is the alchemist. Mars is the potency of the alchemy, energy. It might be controlled as the central HQ by Mercury. Mercury plays that important role. But Mars brings the passion, The passion becomes a desire. So, and we can see that where we see 9 stands adjacent to number 1. 1 is the point of prana, that point of solar potential that expresses the pure energy of the consciousness field as energy. So in order for energy to come into being, okay, let's back this up a little. Let's back this up a bit, ladies and gentlemen. In order for energy to come into being, right, the field of consciousness has got to go through a series of octave shifts. So the first point you could say is the point of singularity. And that point of singularity, you could consider it as the point of origin. And this needs to be expressed as a polarity through the number 2, right? Which holds that potential, the path that draws inward. And that inward drawing path expresses expansion. Because from the point in the center, which is the origin, and the potential to draw into itself, through itself, this, we're talking about a toric field now, we need to be clear. That potential to draw forth from the origin expresses expansion, optimism, right? Jupiter, the expansive principle. And that optimizes the consciousness field. And that optimizing of the consciousness field brings a point of crystallization. And the crystallization, we're not talking about matter, we're talking about the idea of form, right? Talking about the birth of the proverbial state of structure. And that is a stagnant potential that needs the coherency of motion, which is the number 5, which is the adventurer. Advent. Vent? What is to vent? To vent is to move. To allow the essence of one to move through everything is to vent. The adventure, right? And that venture produces a venture, produces movement, change potential. Alchemy is born from 5, right? But it is manifest and perfected in 8. And so this adventure then has got this breathing through all of the 4 potential elements, which then has to be expressed as a dynamic state. And that dynamic state is harmony. And so the harmony is what brings the beauty, and the harmony where things find their natural coherency to operate together, for we are not separate. And that harmony and coherency is then brought to a state of potency. And that potency, we're then looking at the number 7. Now we're looking at the potency, and that's the perennialism. That is the potential to transcend, right? Because the potency is now like a flower. It's come to a ripeness. And that then becomes the spiritual journey, the inward cognitive fundamental state of spiritual recognition and realization. And this inward process then causes the outer field to become crystallized, but which is the number 4, but also to hold some of the essence of number 5 in its movement, but tempered by harmony. So seeking the beauty of movement within, which is the crystallization of the outside. And so number 8 becomes the paradigm of balance between the physical and the spiritual, as 8 is an expression of the perfect dynamic expression of number 4, which is structure and form. So 8 then becomes dynamic form, right? And the dynamic form is then the changing, and now we have time. You see, now we have time. But we aren't in the physical, solid, physical universe yet, right? The physical, solid universe has to happen. But in order for this to happen, there has to be a completion of this process. And now we move towards activation. This entire structure of time needs to become activated. And it becomes activated by action. And this is the cause and effect elements working together. The effect that drives the cause, that drives the effect, that drives the cause. And this rotational flux produces the potency and the potential to transmit. And the transmission then of number 9 is through the epicenter, through the origin of 1. And now we have a loop. And now we have the 10th Sefirot of the Kabbalah. We have the Malkut coming into existence. Now we have the physical solid realm. And so the number 1 then becomes the crystallization of the solid realm, which is bringing the 4 and the 8 time into existence. And 4 represents space and 8 represents time. Do you see why space and time are not separate? How we're being shown this in this diagram? And when we then consider number 1 as the origin, the next octave of the origin is now, what is the origin of physical space becoming physical with time? That's the sun, right? So now in the next octave, we're seeing the number 1. So what is the number of the sun? The number of the sun is 19. That's the mystic number of the sun. Why is the mystic number of the sun 19? Because 9 has transcended itself to become 10, but it carries the vibration of 9 with it. So it's 19, which is the number 1. So 19 becomes the number of the sun. 20 becomes the number of the lunar number, right? 30 becomes the number of Jupiter, right? 40 becomes the number of the north node, the number of Uranus. 50 becomes the number of the adventurer of Mercury. 60 of Venus, 70 of Neptune and of the south nodes of the moon, and 80 becomes the expression of Saturn. And we come full circle back to 90, which is Mars. And what is 90, right? 90 is 1/4 of 360. But 90 is also 1/3 of 270. These numbers are all quite relevant, right? The 270, when we're talking about sound and vibration. The 360, when we're talking about the degrees of a circle. So, and just exactly how 9 becomes the complete structure is hidden in these two numbers, 270 and 360. So it's really interesting when we start to take this into account. And so when we then jump back to 369, Yemen, you know, the star, I've explained where the 369 is here. Huh? Okay, so this is the Kabbalah in a pure transcendent form without a structure and a picture. In other words, there are no formed structures. There are just relationships expressed here between space and delineations of space. I don't like that tree with all the little Sephirot in the Kabbalah, the way they've taught us in their books, which I do not agree with. Don't agree with their books. Don't get me wrong. I looked at their books, I studied, and I always had a problem with the image. Something about it never stuck well. Kabbalah is supposed to be purely conceptual. We're not supposed to think in those little box thoughts. So this is a kind of a model thought where you don't get a particular image stuck in your mind. It's just a series of relationships which are plotted on a graph. But we have to release this from our image, from our mind, and think in terms of pure conceptual if we want to really reach the mystical knowledge of what is the Kabbalah. And I'm not talking about Jewish mysticism. I want us to be clear. I'm not even talking about Hermetic mysticism. I'm talking about that ancient thing from whence Hermetic mysticism and Jewish mysticism arose, as well as the Kabbalah from the Arabic schools, where this arose from. And this is a very ancient school of numerology. So we are talking here about numerology, essentially. And number 5 holding its very special place with number 4. And 5 and 4, as you can see, are like the key with number 9. Now, I've got 2 enneagrams here. The green one is not an enneagram. It's not an enneagram. It looks like an enneagram. It's not an enneagram. An enneagram, you need to put your finger on a point. You need to draw 9 lines. Each line has to be exactly the same length as every other line. And the 9th point has got to end where you start. And there's only one way to do that with these angles, right? And so there are 2 enneagrams out. There's a blue enneagram, right? And there's a yellow enneagram. The green is 3 triangles. So the blue enneagram and the yellow enneagram are a masculine and a feminine polarities, right? And the 3 triangles represent 3 fundamental states of alchemy. These are the mother letters. The mother letters can be represented as those 3 triangles. One of those triangles, if you look at the green, is 369. The other triangle is 258, and the other triangle is 7, 4, and 1. And obviously, the 7, 4, and 1 adds up to 12, which is 3, right? The 3, 6, 9 adds up to 9, right? And the 2 and the 5 and the 8 adds up to 15, which is 6. So there we see the first triangle, which is 3, 6, 9, is split into 2 separate elements. There's the macrocosmic expression and the microcosmic expression of these 3 fundamental principles. And we can see it there as expressed in the one triangle, but that's expressed throughout all 3 triangles. And those 3 triangles represent the mothers. And then we've got the polarities of the masculine and feminine of the other 9. And these all together add up to 21. These are the 21 major arcana of the tarot. And then these are all within a circle. And the circle that these are within represents the earth, represents Tav, the final of the keys, the world, if you will, from the tarot major arcana, the 22nd major arcana. So we've got the full map here. And then we've got the 10 sephirot, which are the 9 numerations. And the 9 numerations are the 9 points that become, and the 10th is all 9 together as a single unit, which is what they say in the Kabbalah. So when you look at the Kabbalistic drawing, it's wrong. Sorry, but it's wrong. It's wrong. It's a badly drawn picture that they're teaching you in those books that's actually designed to give you misconceptions and misunderstand what's actually being shown to you with the knowledge, which is why it's so toxic and why it's so dangerous and why so many people yeah, exactly. There might definitely be the keys of the universe. In fact, I would go as far as to say I don't know how they couldn't be. So when we then go back to this, back to the Saturn square here, we're looking at how the soul, the energy of the soul, is manifesting, right? Money, the 2 and the 8, right? And the 2 and the 8 are in opposition with the 6 and the 4 and the 1 and the 9 and the 3 and the 7. So they form these relationships, right? And these 4 relationships represent the 4 elements, right? So that's quite interesting in itself if you look at it carefully. And the idea of this pressure of the water, we're talking about the firmament, the water above and the water below. And the water above and the water below are producing these pressured firmament pressure. And that contraction is what we see as being the key to concentration, right? Because pressure means contraction, means concentration. So now we're speaking in a more abstract sense about concentration, which is mental concentration. And when we're talking about mental concentration, we're talking about intention. And we're back to tension, right? And the currency of tension is tension. Why? Because it's the breath. It's the breath, attention, right? And that breath of attention, why the breath? Because the breath is the air that stands between the fire and the water, right? Like we said, we got the 2 and we got the 8, right? Now, the 8 will represent the earth, right? And the 2 will represent the water, right? So we've got the water, we've got the earth, but then we've got the air that drives through the water to connect the water to the earth. And the fire is the source of that unifying potential that brings all of this into being. So the fire is the sun. That's the number 1 that we were talking about on the Enneagram just now. So we see how these elements are sort of working out of the system in order to like bring about this cohesive structure of pressure, contraction, Saturn, time, And that is the source of concentration. So when you're speaking about developing concentration, you're talking about the school of Saturn, the cube. This is why it's so important to develop meditative potential, be able to learn to concentrate, because that intention is literally a tension you're building within. And that tension is reverberating through the planes of existence of the unconscious. And these are literally vibrating the universe. So whenever we hold our concentration and our intention of mind upon a particular intention, we start this rhythm. And this rhythm principle is really the key from a shamanic perspective. And now we're going to take a look at the shaman. So why does the shaman hold to the principle of rhythm? Because there are 7 principles, right? Why rhythm? Hold on a moment, baby. Ladies and gentlemen, I need to find my field of correspondences. I made a pretty little, I made such a pretty little picture. And I made it for you guys. So I hope you guys like it. So in my little field of correspondence here that I made, we can see the principles here, the 7 principles: gender, cause and effect, rhythm, polarity, vibration, correspondence, mentalism. I've explained ad infinitum how these come into being and how these operate together. If you guys want, I can run over that again, but I'm guessing that it should be fairly easy to conceptualize. The radiating nature of this sphere. Yeah, man, it does, doesn't it? You know, and that's why I have an issue with what they call the other enneagram, that other nonsense. What's that other nonsense? Oh my gosh, it's just so annoying, man. Let's get it. Let's get it. Come on, ladies and gentlemen. This is why I created it. I created it to wash that rubbish out of people's brains, because I found that nonsense. Oh gosh, enneagram. And let's get a picture. Sorry, I'm taking so long, peeps. I'll just get a picture here so we can see it. And I'll tell you what I dislike about this image. It's not an enneagram. I want to be clear. Okay, I'm going to say it. I need to shout through the rooftops, right? That other thing is not an enneagram. The thing I'm going to show you now in a minute is not an enneagram. We can believe it's an enneagram, but believing something doesn't make it true, right? So this thing that everybody else runs around calling an enneagram, right? You cannot draw this item. You cannot draw this, right, in the form of a true enneagram. Have you noticed that the lines are not all the same length, right? The line between 5 and 7 is not the same length as the line between that. It's not the same length. In order to draw a pentagram, you need 5 lines that are exactly the same length, right? In order to draw a septagram or an octagram or a dodecagram, you need that number of lines that are exactly the same length. And they have to end where they begin. This is a carefully constructed thing of different lines of different lengths. So the length between 2 and 8 is very different to the length between 2 and 4, for example. So this is some kind of a structure that has been drawn, right? Which is mimicking an enneagram. The difference is, though, we've got this huge gaping hole here between 4 and 5. And that means this is not an item that can spin. This is a structure of proverbially not being alive. This is a symbol of death. For those that can see it, they can see it. In China, they have an issue with the number 4 because 4 means crystallization, means not being able to move. This structure cannot spin. It doesn't have chakra. It doesn't have within it the potential to spin. It is a 9-sided star, but it doesn't have the cohesion, the symmetry necessary to express the turning and the rotation and the very important element of what we're discussing here. But when we look at this, we see a very different structure. We see something that's designed to spin, like it's a rotary, right? And as it turns, it doesn't lose anything. It doesn't change. You could spin it around in circles. It's still going to be exactly the same thing. In fact, it is spinning. It represents spinning, whirling elements of force, chakra, all the sephirot. They're all spirale, right? So that's one of the reasons I actually created this enneagram image for people, so people can see it and can get a sense of what we're talking about. So now getting back to the rhythm principle, and why the rhythm principle is so important, right? The rhythm principle is rather fundamental, and we can see that rhythm holds a place here. Now, we've got three circles. We've got a red circle, we've got a yellow circle, we've got a blue circle. These represent the etheric field, the astral field, and the causal field. Now, they might be drawn badly. I want you to imagine that the astral field and the causal fields together, the astral field and the etheric field together make up the causal field. So red plus yellow equals blue as a concept, right? They're not all equal. And yellow is much bigger than red, exponentially bigger. And blue is exponentially bigger than yellow and red. So the causal field breaks down to the polarity of the Ida and the Pingala. The yellow obviously is the Ida. The red obviously is the Pingala. That red dot. When you draw the Om, there's three elements to the Om. There's the two crescents, which are the golden spiral, phi, representations of two spirals, with the third phi spiral. So you've got 1, 2, 3, and they all should be in relation to the spiral of phi, right? So the 1, right, and the 2 and the 3, they should be getting bigger in relation to the phi thing, the ratio, golden spiral ratio. And then we have a second crescent, which would be in yellow, which represents the capturing, right? And the tat, the Om, Tat, and Sat, represents the capturing and that principle that moves between the absolute and the manifestational. And then we've got the bindi, the red dot in the yellow crescent, which represents Om. Om is the manifesting vibrational frequency. So you've got those three elements here that we're looking at. And what I've taken that concept from the Vedic law to give us a notion of how this fits together. And because if the truth is the truth, then the truth of Hermetics and the truth of the Kabbalah and the truth of the Vedic knowledge should all be able to stand together, and they should not contradict each other. If they contradict each other, there's something wrong with the model, right? If the model doesn't fit all of those systems, because those are all systems of occult, esoteric wisdom and knowledge of metaphysics, and if the idea is understood, it should be a universal idea and it should be able to be applied through anything. If you master one school of martial arts, you can relate and understand to another school of martial arts that you haven't trained in, because of your fundamental understanding of the principles of form, matter, and how to move through it. And so the same idea holds true in the esoteric occult field when it comes to magic, sorcery, witchcraft. These are all different words, but they all come back down to the same idea, right? Which is interesting. So the principle of rhythm holds this very special place between, you see, you got the center of the field, of the etheric field, which is cause and effect being expressed in the etheric. That's shape and form. Cause and effect produces shape and form. It's delineating, right? boundaries. And the center of the field of energy is polarity. For polarity is how energy is expressed. So shape and form is expressed through cause and effect, because the cause becomes the effect is the shape holds the cause is the becoming of the shape. Polarity is the expression of energy, for energy needs to move through the field of polarity in order to be able to be energizing, right? And the field of the spiritual, of the causal, at the heart of it is correspondence. For all things need to be in a field of correspondence. This is the jnana yoga of the Vedic school is focused upon that field, that second principle of Hermes, of working with the correspondence and gaining an insight and understanding to how all things fit together. So that field is the field of correspondence, the field of polarity, and the field of cause and effect. But on the extremities of the field of cause and effect, we have the field of gender, which is that repolarization coming together of the polarizing effect of energy. So energy is now becoming concrete, and that means that the phallic potential needs to be embedded within the cataic potential in order to produce a significant union. And that union is how we experience space-time as one thing, rather than just disassociated things or disassociated states, shall we say. A field, a unified field, if you will. Now, the rhythm principle sits between this field of the polarity and the cause and effect. And so rhythm, sitting between the field of the cause and effect and the polarity, holds a very special place because it's a transit point energetically. So the shaman used this transit point because it's about transiting, right? It's about moving in and out of the physical field. Rhythm is the fastest way to induce a trance that you can travel out of your body. There's a reason for it. Here's the reason. Vibration is the key to rhythm's essence, because rhythm is meting out vibration. So vibration and rhythm are two expressions of the same thing, but the rhythm is how that vibration is coded. Vibration is the raw substance. Rhythm is the fundamental architecture of vibration. So vibration and rhythm, you can see, both conduit points. And the field of correspondence and polarity dance on either side of the field of vibration. So vibration brings the mental impulses of correspondences together so that they can transit through vibration to become energy, polarity. The polarity, which is energy, needs to transit through the rhythm field in order to become solid, solidifying principles of shape, the cause and effect that becomes physicality. So the etheric field exists because rhythm is a valve that brings the energy into external potential. And energy exists because it's brought through the vibrational valve. Now, the vibrational valve is the valve in your throat. This is one of the bandhs in yoga. One of the important bandhs in yoga. The Visuddhi chakra has got a bandh. And that bandh will close at certain times. We've got a bandh at the Muladhara chakra and the point of gender, right? Because there is a point of gender where there's touching something else, right? We're not getting into the klipot now. We're not going into the lower spheres. But that point of gender is a bandh, right? And then the other bandh is the bandh at the pit of your stomach. You have felt that bandh close if you're anxious. If you've ever been in a state of anxiousness or anxiety, you felt this lump in your stomach feeling like it's closing, that's your natural rhythm center closing. It's a valve. If you've ever felt hyper emotional, you felt this lump in your throat closing, that lump in your throat closing, that's the vibrational field closing. It's a valve. So those two valves are fundamental. But rhythm is the valve that is able to help us to make a transition between the etheric and the astral. And because rhythm is an expression of vibration, we can even, through the field of vibration, which is the essence of rhythm, touch the causal, which is the spiritual plane. These are the three planes of shamanism. So this is the shamanic way, the shamanic path of the three worlds, the three worlds of the shaman, which is also, you could think of it in terms of the causal of the Vedics, or the astral plane, polarity, energy, or the etheric plane of form and structure. Or you could think of it as Shashumna, the blue field, that transcendental spiritual element, pure thought. Or the astral emotional field of the Ida field, bringing that current of the pituitary into the physical body. Or the etheric, which is the Pingala. And the Pingala is obviously the pineal gland in the physical body, bringing these three elements into the physical body so that we're able to have the Pingala regulating the central nervous system through the pineal, and the Idas regulating the hormonal system through the two nodes, the anterior and posterior elements of the pituitary gland. And we have the seat of the soul, right? The seat of the soul within the throat, the parathyroid and the thyroid systems. That's why they speak of the Visuddhi chakra as containing the egg, the cosmic egg of space. So space is contained here. That's the Akasha. And the Akasha is a transcendent potential of space becoming time, space and time, essentially. So if you transcend these etheric and astral fields, you can enter into the Akasha, where you transcend the mechanistic movement of time and space, because all time is already here now. The movement is an illusion. I hope I'm not going too fast. Please tell me if I am. Am I going too fast? Big love, CB. Hope you're good. Hope you're well. Hope you're thriving. Yeah, Carly. I like the way your mind works. Definitely. So looking at these elements, and big love, CB. I hope you're well. Big love. The radiating nature of the sphere deeply resonates. So maybe I've been going a bit fast for people. I don't know. We shall see. Maybe. But so anyway, these different potentials. My cow is getting cold. He's got cold cow. Spellcasting can be defined by balancing the energy you channel against the resistance of the target or environment, electrical circulation. Yeah, I mean, basically, it's the circulating potentials and the energies. So when we're looking at the structure of the shamanic potential, which is that principle of rhythm, that rhythm then becomes the key. And we're talking about circadian rhythms. It carries the circadian rhythms in the body, in the life force. The prana is bound to the circadian rhythms. And the solar potential of the sun, the number 1 from our, which is the number 19, bringing its energy into extension, right? Brings that potential in to the physical body. And that's why we call it wait for it, ladies and gentlemen. Are you guys ready? We call it the solar plexus. Why do we call that place in the gut the solar plexus? Well, there you go. Now we're getting an insight that it's got a relation to that number 1, bringing the principle of rhythm. And the rhythms of the physical body are, yes, the thyroid and the parathyroid, the vibrational field, the element of vibration, as we were expressing it before, right? As we said, that rhythm is the structure of vibration. So when we look here, the principle of vibration is what we are talking about, that's being channeled into the form. But the principle of rhythm is what's managing and organizing that structure. If you can use the word structure, it's a bad word. Shall we say the patterning? Probably better. The patterning of it. So the patterning of it is bound by the principle of rhythm. And so that principle of rhythm is locked into your stomach. This is why we have the vagus nerve, the anterior and posterior vagus nerve elements, which move currents up and down between the solar plexus and the Visuddhi chakra, the throat sphere. And why we have the all important in Chinese medicine, the triple burner acting as a conduit between these two potentials, between the potential of rhythm and vibration. Vibration being the entrainment of the rhythm, but the rhythm expresses and puts into code what the vibration is, shall we say. And so based upon the metabolic reactions of the thyroid and parathyroid, the way they tune all the hormonal systems in the body, the pancreas will play its important role in manifesting what's happening in the stomach, in the belly, right? The top point of the bell is where the vibration starts. That's the solar plexus. And so that solar plexus carries that powerful triple burner energy, and it's the seed of digestion. And the digestion, which is once again managed by the pancreas, and the systems related to the stomach, and the enzyme package release system, the gallbladder. There's a gallbladder. There's one more appendix. No, it's not appendix. It's a gallbladder. Yeah. Well, will carry and hold these essences, and they will then be released. And the process of digestion and the enzymes and everything that's gonna produce the chemical reactions that produces heat, and the heat that's produced by the chemical reactions in the stomach drives all the metabolic energies, which is why we get our energy from our food. And that's why the number 8, what we ate, is what we get food energy from. That's Saturn, the number 8, right? So what we ate becomes the structuring principle, which, as we said before, number 8 regulates, Saturn regulates time. And what are we talking about here? We're talking about metabolic reaction. We're talking about the ticking of little clocks, time, the timing in the body, the principle of rhythm, right? Tied to the solar fire, tied to the solar plexus. And that's the point where the sun comes in. Now we're going to be getting a slight insight into the nature of the black sun and Saturn, right? Because the solar plexus is the solar, it's the sun. But the solar is fire, and the fire is the heart. And that fire of the heart brings the prana around the system through the lungs, because the heart and the lungs are wired into each other, right, sympathetically. And the heart and the lungs then channel these two elemental potentials of the fire, right, through the system. And the lungs also channel, I believe, the balance of the air element. And there's then wooden air drives the fire, right, of the lungs, drives the fire of the heart. And so it becomes the central system circulating the prana and the energy around through the conduit system of the circulatory system, right, through our blood, right. And that's the matrix. The blood is the matrix, carries the matrix of all the energetic potential. And it carries all of the metals and the electromagnetic field. And the red blood platelets are electrical in nature, stabilizing electrical potentials, having their own effects upon the polarity in the electrical fields in the blood. And the white blood cells are acting out these electrical potentials, right, in order to maintain foreign bodies get grabbed by the white blood cells and get made inert, toxins or invasion particles invading the system that can cause problems. So by trying to become a part of the dance that they weren't invited to, like imagine you're in a nightclub in the old days and you're all doing a very particular dance together, and these random people walk in the front door and they want to join you for the dance, but they don't know the steps. You've got the bouncers to keep them off the dance floor. That's the white blood cells, right? And the red blood cells are like the conductors They're the conductors of the ceremony, conducting the dance, giving the signs for everybody to step that way, and everybody to step that way and step this way. So the red and the white blood cells, they work together in manifesting and managing this whole circus of physicality. But so yeah, when we look at how the system manifests, this principle of rhythm, which is the way of the shaman, is drummed into us and drummed out of us. That's why a shaman has to have a drum, because a drum is an instrument of rhythm, right? You play your drum, you get into a rhythmical trance. You feel the rhythm. You go with the rhythm. You don't need to think. You don't have to figure anything out. You don't need to know anything. Just follow the rhythm. The rhythm will put you into that state of mind where you're like a snake, right? A serpent. If you've ever been in the wild and you've seen the way snakes are, they do this. They're moving. They like, if they come up, they're moving. They're really cool to watch, man. You can sit and play with snakes and watch them forever. Fascinating creatures. And they express this principle of rhythm so beautifully. You know, that's why when you dance, if you feel like a snake when you dance, you'll be so in tune with the principle of rhythm, it will just be going out of fashion. If you want to dance, take on the form of a snake in your mind and feel like a snake and move like a snake, and your body will just know what to do. So this is like, you know, yeah, Carly, you know, big love, the star, only a pleasure, only a pleasure. The breath of fire, exactly, you know, the soul. And yes, the accelerator particles utilize archetype names. So lately been noticing a lot of instances where I almost speak events into form, and I'm confused as to why it's occurring. You know, that's a double fold thing there, huh? CB, because on the one level we are co-creating part of the action. On another level, we are sensitive to the causal time field. People wonder what's the most powerful power that there is in the universe. Think about it. The most potent power there is to know the future, right? It doesn't matter what power you have if someone knows what you're going to do before you do it, because they could circumvent you. Think about it. Just think about it. Always be ahead of the game. So there's all these different potentials working together. And so on the one hand, it's seeing the future. On the other hand, it's being part of the system that's driving and getting an insight into what's happening and being part of the creative system, because the soul is always manifesting reality. And so this is what it means to be in tune with manifestation, is to be in tune with the soul manifesting, because it is being manifest. And the danger is our egos can become highly activated by this process, because then we think, oh, it's me. We don't realize that we are part of a process. We're part of a synergetic expression of being. And our free will, seeming as free as it is also part of the illusion, right? Like if we really look at that, so, you know, yeah, intuition or active creation. And I think they're not really separate. I think it depends on which side of look at the Enneagram. Are you dancing on the blue lines, or are you dancing on the yellow lines? But it's the same thing, right? It's the same Enneagram, it's the same story. And you're going to get seemingly a different experience if you're dancing on one line or another line, but it will still be fundamentally the same. So, you know, in a sense, that sort of is what it is. Exactly. Hello, Squirrel Sniper. How are you doing? Squirrel Sniper, are you all alone in the chat, by the way? Let's just take a look at, okay, so CB, can you see the other chat from everybody else? This is really interesting. So Squirrel Sniper and CB are in the phone episode. Hey, Darlene, namaste, how are you? By the way, would you like to see the chat from everybody else? CB and Squirrel Sniper? I'll give you a hint. if you go to, wait until after I've explained it, and then you'll see what I mean. If you click on my little face at the bottom, there's the Bush Whisperer, and you go to my channel, you'll see that there's 2 lives right there on the front page. The one live, when you click on it, it's got like a little sign on the right-hand side that looks like a, let me show you. Let me take you down so you'll see it through strawberry fields where nothing is real. There's nothing to get hung about. Strawberry fields forever. So here you can see, look at all of this chat here. Yeah. If you're in the other chat, you might not be seeing all of this conversation happening, but there's like a whole lot of people having a whole lot of conversation here, right? So you click here where it says Bush Whisperer, and you go to Bush Whisperer page, and you'll notice that there are 2 lives here, right? You see this little picture here? This little picture here, it looks different on a phone, but there's still a little picture there. That's the mobile phone one. If I click on the mobile phone picture, right, the chat is different. You see? I've only got these 2 lonesome. Are you lonesome tonight? All those brookies on tight. Do you feel like you're winning the life? So basically, yeah, you come back to this place and you go to that one where it says 13 watching, and you'll see all of them lot having a chit chat, having a tongue waggle, a tongue tong tong ting, getting into the tangling tong tong tangling. So that's like an idea for you guys. If you want to join the group and see everybody else, you can be on there. YouTube basically makes me use twice. They made me do it. I'm sorry. They made me do it. I didn't have a choice. I had to make 2 different lives. They don't expose my live to the world if I don't make 2. YouTube's an evil bastard, and they want to separate them into 2 separate lives because they like making our lives complex. They're supposed to put it into a unified chat, but because I'm running it through StreamYard, I don't know why it just doesn't do it. Anyway, maybe that's something that will be fixed with some kind of an update. But regardless, it is what it is, and that's what it is. So you published your research, Squirrel Sniper. Nice. I hope it's good research. So yeah, for those of you that want to, if you're on the phone one, then you can change to the other chat, and then you'll see all the other people's chat running through there. But yeah, so the notion of, because other people can't see your chat, Seabree, and like D-Love and Squirrel and Edward and Carly and Darlene and the Star, they're not seeing your chat. So when I'm responding to something that they said, you guys in the other live are going like, huh? Who's he talking to? Is this someone else? I'm supposed to be getting chat from Facebook here too, but I never seem to get chat from Facebook. Maybe nobody goes onto the Facebook one because it's crappy. It's much better being on the YouTube. I think it's less issues. I should probably wasting a stream slot to even put it onto Facebook. Probably not a good idea. Maybe I'll have to get down to that and take a look at that. But yeah, so this whole principle of rhythm, the shamanic profound path of subjugating one's self, right? Basically in service of the principle of rhythm, brings us to that fundamental place where we are in that valve, that point of transition, the translation point between this energetic resonance. Now, I want you to look at the numerology. This is quite interesting, right? The numerology between 6 and 7, right? The will. I don't think that's an accident, right? So if we look between 6 and 7, right? Now we're going to cross-reference this to the enneagram here, just to get a Slightly different perspective. When we look at 6 and 7 together, right? Where do 6 and 7 go? 6 and 7 together, cross-reference them, the two yellow lines, they move towards the empath, towards number 2. That's mediumship, right? And so that mediumship has got to do with channeling. It's got to do with evocation, right? Where if you look at, for example, so you'll see all of these things that I've made, they actually fit into each other. Yeah, I know it took a little bit of time, but I made it happen, baby. I did it for you because I love you. So if you look at number 3 and 4, right? Okay, we're going to go back down here now. We're going to go to 3 and 4. So you can see the other side of it, vibration. Good vibrations. So when you got 3 and 4, 3 and 4 goes to 8, right? Does this ring a bell, people? 3 and 4, vibration goes to 8, right? 6 and 7, rhythm goes to 2. Do you remember in the beginning of this conversation, what was I talking about? I was talking about the pressure, right? And how the Saturn square is a polarity between 2 and 8, and how those are two elements of mani, those two elements of the chakra, right? Mani, and how that activates the two lower chakras for manifestation. So you can see the 2 and the 8 here in the Saturn square holding those primal positions of polarity. And you can see how vibration and rhythm tie into that, where rhythm is the substance of number 8, right? Vibration is the substance of number 2. When the substance of, let me rephrase that better. Where the substance of vibration points to number 2 and the substance of rhythm points to number 8. That's the correct way to put it. When you're looking at it from the enneagram's perspective. And that shows us with these yellow lines here, right? The elements of how the 3 and the 4 point to 8 and how the 6 and the 7, right, point to 2. And then you can see what is going on here with this particular little diagram here as they relate to the Sephirot, right? And so this is also giving us an insight to how the chakra relate to the Sephirot. That's quite important. And so the Visuddhi chakra, right, is the potential dancing between 3 and 4, right? That's quite important to understand, right? That space between Chesed, right, and Binah, which we call, what do we call that? We call that the abyss. That abyss is the dark egg space, the egg form, the cosmic egg of the chakra Visuddhi. You can see how the chakras are integrally fitted in to the Sephirot. Now, I want you to acknowledge that there are a lot of so-called occultists out there that have tried to imply the Sephirot, that the chakras upon the Sephirot, but you're seeing another way of looking at it here. Because remember, the chakras carry the qualities, and the Sephirot carry the definition. The definition is the shape and the form. The quality is the energy that fills. So the Sephirot are containers that contain the potential, and the qualities is that substance which is the heart of the potential that is contained by the containers. And so the chakras are spinning vortices of energy, spinning represented as chakra, where the Sephirot are represented as rotating spheres. And the rotating spheres contain within it the spinning vortices of energy. So to understand that is to gain an insight into the differences between the Western and the Eastern. And the one is working with the astral potential, the Vedic, the chakra, and the Western is working with the Sephirotic tree, which is the etheric potential, So the number 72 fits into the Western tree. The number 108 fits into the chakra tree. And that's when we look at a pentagram, we see that the pentagram is constructed of 108, 72, 108, 72, 108, 72, 5 times running around, right? No coincidence there, right? So 540 is the vibrational field of the astral running around 5 cycles around the pentagram, because it's 5. And the 5 times 72 is the 360 degrees of the circle. These are like vibrational ketones, frequencies. So the ketone frequencies of the sphere of the circle represents 360, which is the sephirotic tree of the etheric, and the 540 represents the vibrational ketones of quality of sound that are filling those spheres. So to gain an insight into that is to gain an insight into the differences between the Western mindset and the Asian Indian mindset. And I think it's like really fundamental for anybody that's practicing mystic arts or occult arts. And the distinctions between the mystic and the occult arts are quite fundamental when we look at this. So that gives us a little bit of an insight. Yeah, squirrel. Yeah, man. Yeah. So these two elements, to understand them is to understand how our pituitary gland runs our hormonal system through the chakra system, through the number 108. Through the 108, it's got 3 cycles of 36 or 4 cycles of 27. Or the 72 has got 2 cycles of 36, right? Gets quite interesting, isn't it? Or 6 cycles of 12. And so we see the hexagram finding its structure. And the hexagram and the cube of space is what defines the etheric field. Where the hexagram is the expression pointing back towards the fundamental point of energy and potential, right? And it works in conjunction with the number 7. And so that's quite important to bear that in mind, that it acts as a conjunction point, which is exactly what we're looking at when we're looking at rhythm. So this is why shamanism is based upon the principle of rhythm. And the principle of rhythm is the key. Now, you might notice that the Western occult is not based upon the principle of rhythm, right? And that's quite interesting, right? The Western occult is not based upon the principle of rhythm. They are not seeking to move outwards. The Western system, right, is moving from the point of vibration. So the Western mind tends to be over analytically intellectual and mental, right? The Asian mind tends to be more emotional and passionate and intuitive. An intuitive, passionate, emotional grasp. And emotion and feeling are not the same, right? Feeling is the sphere of emotion as it's imagined in the body. So the experience of polarity becomes feeling, where emotion is it's a vibe. You just pick up the vibe, man. Pick up the vibe, that's the emotion. But it's abstract. But when that abstraction of the vibe, which you cannot really put into words, when it gets conceived of and understood, it becomes a feeling, because a feeling is something you can, it's constructive, where the vibe is not constructive, it's more destructive. It's breaking itself down, it's a cosmic egg. So the difference between emotion and feeling is worlds apart. And people use the words as if they're the same thing, but they're not. And then passion. Passion finds where the emotion has become the energy of feeling. That feeling then becomes solidified as passion. And that is the passing of ions, pass ion, pass ion, passion. And the passing of ion is that powerful energy to express, right? The center of self-expression, the will, the Manipura chakra, right? Mani. Now we're talking about Mani, right? So in Indian systems, when you speak of Mani, you're talking about the gem that relates to the principle of rhythm in the solar plexus, right? But when we're talking about Mani, money, in the West, we're talking about vibration, the element of Isis, right? And Isis represents the number 2, represents the watery potential, represents, once again, we just keep coming full circles, don't we? We keep coming back to the same point, but it's important for people to recognize how these systems work. We're back to looking at the perspective of the apex number 2 of the green potential and the apex number 8 of the orange potential here as polarizing effects. And the difference between the Western mind and the Indian mind, the Vedic mind, but that it's the same structure and it's the same system. This, incidentally, is the Vedic astrological chart. For those of you who don't know, that's what it looks like, the 9 different elemental energies. And I've broken down the numerology correctly so that it doesn't contradict any numerological systems here to construct these ideas, seed words. You should do it for yourself. Like, fine, maybe you'll find words that work better for you for these numbers, but keep the purity of the intention of what they mean in heart and in mind, and create your own structure. But the planets, those are universal, like whether you're going with Chaldean systems or Vedic systems, or they're all universal, you know. Number 3 is always going to be Jupiter. Number 8 is always going to be Saturn. Number 1 is always going to be the Sun. Number 2 is always going to be the Moon, right? Number 4 is always going to be Uranus, right? Number 7 is always going to be Neptune. 5 is always going to be Mercury, and 6 is always going to be Venus. And that's just how the numbers work. So the fundamentals of these numerologies, and you might notice something in that weird sort of higgle-piggledy, I'm teaching the Kabbalah, those old men that consider themselves magicians, they do magic, or they're a witch, they're doing witchcraft, or they are a sorcerer, right? Kabbalist teachers, they've drawn this funny little structure of sephirots and the tree of life that everybody's been introduced to by these books, which I believe is a psyop. I can't say it enough. Be careful. The people that wrote those books weren't necessarily practitioners. They don't know what they're talking about. They don't have an intimate experiential connection with these stuff. The reason I'm able to share this with you is not because I've read all these books, but because I've experienced this all for myself, face to face, actualized. And that has got to do with practice and training, right? Sit in tens of thousands and hours of meditation and focus one's consciousness to experience these states of being and potentials within oneself, and one will gain a personal relationship with all of this, and then one will just grasp and understand these things beyond any book. But the people that wrote the books on the Kabbalah that everybody's praising, oh, have you read this book, oh, have you read this writer, oh, those were intellectual people that read other people's writings. And the other people writings that they read were also intellectual people that fancied themselves as magicians. Right, I'm a magician. I've read a lot of books. I've got a great library. And so they wrote these books because of their egotism, because they didn't realize how little experience they had. And they had a hunger for knowledge. They had to constantly be looking at the books. But had they been more experientially drawn, they wouldn't have had need for the books. And they'd be able to construct and deconstruct things from an innate perspective based upon experiential learning. And this is the difference. This is the fundamental difference between the shamanic path and the path of the occultist. Unfortunately, the occultist relies upon the writings of other occultists who were more interested in learning and reading than practicing. And you go back through the books, it's the same thing. And if you've got the experience of these forces, you would understand how much of those books are just people taking other people's ideas, oh, I understand that, and writing it down as if it's their own. But they didn't really have a tactile, visceral contact and experience with all of these forces. They did through their imagination, but through their imagination, a limited perspective. Because in the West, there was this idea that people don't really have to practice that much, right? But in India, they kept it true. They kept it real, right? You want to be an ascetic? Yeah, you're going to be an ascetic, right? You're going to meditate for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours. You're going to go live in the jungle. You're going to train, man. You're going to train your ass off. You're going to count how much meditation you've done in thousands of hours blocks, right? Keep track, like a pilot who's learning to be a good pilot, right? Keep track of how much flight time you've got. How experienced are you? Are you a good pilot? Yeah. I've flown a lot of aircrafts. I've got like 50,000 hours of flight time recorded. I'm a damn good pilot. I know what I'm doing, as opposed to someone who's a rookie. Now, these people who are writing these books on the Kabbalah and Hermetics, and all, these were all rookies. But people don't know that they're rookies because they look up to these people and they think, wow, that's a famous book. Everybody, that book's famous because a certain little group of old gentlemen that also are more interested in reading than practicing have made those books popular and famous for us because of the printing press and because of the way the situations work. So when we start to grasp how the system has been come together, we can start recognizing that the soul energy, right, that is this structure of reality, is dancing between this mental field and the emotional field. And the mental field gets stuck in concepts of structure. The emotional field moves like the fluid that flows through those structures, the emotions. And that intuitive potential is an evocative experience. And the evocative experience is to experience personally from within, as opposed to, oh, well, I'm going to imagine this and put this inside myself, because you can invoke all sorts of BS into yourself and think it's this and that. But when it comes to the evocative experience, it's the core of who we are. Our emotions are much more closer to our core, and the feelings that come from those emotions are closer to our core than who we think we are or believe ourselves to be, right? And we know this because it's just common sense. So this is the shortfalls and the challenges of the Western tradition. However, if you look at the old times of the ancient Greeks, those guys put themselves through the paces. They'd fast for long periods. They would put themselves in a box with there's fires burning and having a huge sweat lodge for like days on end, putting themselves to the edge, testing their limits, testing their mettle. And this is something that in the West hasn't been done. So initiations are like cute little bells and incense, and it's all sweet and cute. And, oh, I got an initiation. It's like, some martial arts schools give you this like cute little grading, and it's sweet, and you got this nice belt, but you can't apply any of that martial arts. A lot of the schools are like this, I know. Like if you were the real martial arts school, the grading, you can get a little bit hurt. You can get a little bit hurt in the grading. And if you really want to like get a proper grading, you should collapse. You should push yourself to the limits that you collapse and earn the respect of your teachers, because you can't get up off the floor. Why? Because you pushed yourself that hard. That's how you get the respect. So in the same way, in the old times, you didn't get your belt. Like, oh, but you did everything. I did everything perfect. Why didn't I get my grade? Because you could still walk. Well, what's that mean? It means you didn't give everything. You need to give everything of yourself to the point that you collapse. You need to be carried away off that dojo floor. Then you've earned your belt. And so it's those two different concepts. And people say to me like, well, when I trained, I flew through belts. I'd fly through like 2 or 3 belts at a time. Go to one dojo, one grading, and I'd go through many belts. So I flew I got from like white belt to grading for like Shodan in a couple of years, which is like unheard of. And people say, oh, but that's not real. It shouldn't have happened. No, it happened because I used to collapse on the floor and they had to pick me up and carry me out of the dojo. That's how committed I was to the focus. That's how much I was prepared to give. Every strike was every single bit of my soul and my chi and my being. Every movement was all of me. There was nothing that was not all of me. And it was visible to the teachers. And they were like, you're grading for what? That belt? No, he can't have that. But we're giving him another 2 belts. He's way ahead of that belt. This guy's over black belt level. So, that level of commitment and training has not been in the Western schools to that degree. It's very nice, sweet little intellectual journey with a little bit of incense, a couple of little rituals, get together, do a little bit of a show, develop a little bit of psychic abilities, and balance, and it's all good. but there's definitely something missing in the Western school. And if you get to a certain degree of training in it, then you'll realize that you'll be called to another place. The Taoists, my gosh, they are the masters of alchemy in a sense. If you really get right down to it, they've got a I don't understand why I'm having this issue here. Why my comments won't. There's something very weird happening here. Is it because I've got that out there? That's very strange. So yeah. So basically, these were the ideas that I want to share, and the principle of manifestation has got to do running between these two points, between the etheric, right? Between the etheric and the astral. And so we see the point of 2 and the point of 8 acts as the two valves. And the two valves then represent this process, right? And this is how we're able to manifest. We need to bring together both elements. And that's the key. The etheric and the astral need to be working together, which means that the etheric needs to be embedded within the astral. Think of the etheric as a phallus, and think of the astral as a cataic instrument. And the phallic instrument and the cataic instrument need to be put together. And so you need to get this sort of motion going, like a vibrator. The universe has got to make love with itself. And that is like when the potential of number 5, which is the movement and the energy, is going to be expressed through the system. And that is where the manifestation starts to become active. And without understanding these principles, one can still be in the seat of manifestation. But, I think it's important for us to recognize that it's not just a matter of the pineal gland and all this nonsense about the chakra being the pineal gland. I am so tired of all these bloody new ages that have read this crap in a book and memorized it, and even these so-called Western, Eastern, Indian gurus telling us it's pineal. No. The third eye, the Ajna chakra, is the potential between the pineal and the pituitary glands, the emotional and the logos mind coming together, because the emotional intelligence is as fundamental as the rational intelligence. And when the rational intelligence is embedded within the emotional intelligence, then we have that guru principle that is being liberated. And then we're able to expand our horizons beyond our ideas and our beliefs into new potentials. The creativity of Jupiter is released into our consciousness. And so that becomes fundamental. So there we go. That has been 1 hour and 45 minutes. Hope you guys enjoyed the conversation. Hope you guys found it cute. I found this conversation rather cute. Yeah, I'm gonna go. Gotta go and do things. But it's been fun being here with you guys, and sending you all big love. Yeah, D-Love, Squirrel, Freya. Sorry, I zone out of the chat sometimes when I'm going into the trance of knowledge. I get drunk on drinking from the proverbial teeth of the cosmic queen, shall we say. How does this 1 to 9 circle enneagram relate to time? Like manifesting instantly or way fast or very fast? Okay, let's get this enneagram. So here we have the cycle of time. This is how time, this is the structure of how time comes into being. And space, because space is time, time is space, right? So these are the elements of how it comes into being. And 8 is the representative of the time. And 2 is the representative of that potential. And when we then look at this 2, what we're talking about is the 7 and the 6, right? And we're looking at the 8, which is the 4 and the 3, right? And just to understand the correspondences of what we're talking about here, so that these make more sense to us, right? So between the 7 and the 6, the will of Saturn, right? And between the 3 and the 4, the memory of the moon, right? And the memory is the place where it's all happening, and the will is the structuring element that's structuring it. So then the time, right? The time becomes this dance, right? Between the 8 and the 2. 2 being the second point of movement, and 8 being the second last point of movement. And now we're sort of getting an insinuation to what becomes the head and the tail of the Ouroboros, right? The head and the tail of the Ouroboros does fit together in this fundamental way, even though on the lunar chart 1 and 2 represent the head and the tail, because it's Cancer and Leo if we look at the zodiac. But these 2 fundamental points is 8 representing the structure of time and 2 representing the flow of time. And the flow of time and the structure of time together becomes the timeline. And you can see here the number 7, right, has got to do with the past. And you can see here the number 4 has got to do with the future, right? So the 2 is moving towards the future, and the past is moving towards Saturn, if you want to look at the progression, right? So Saturn is receiving the past, and 2 is embarking towards the future through the principle of expansion of Jupiter. So 2 expands through Jupiter to become the future, and 7 contracts into 8 to become the past. And the past is what our contracts are. Hence we say 7 contracts into 8. And those past contracts dictate our future. And our flow of Jupiter's optimism, optimizing the potentials, moving towards the future, carries the significance of the past's contracts. And so there's polarity between Jupiter and Saturn of expansion and contraction becomes the breathing of time, essentially. So yeah. And just to get back to this point, right? To look at these correspondences a moment, you see that time is the lords of rhythm. And the lords of rhythm are dictating how the vibrational field is going to be sectioned. And that sectioning of the vibrational field, right, the 2 is sectioned by the 8 to produce this field. And this field is that spinning centripetal and centrifugal potentials of time expanding and contracting Jupiter and Saturn and the future and the past. I hope that's helpful to you, Carly. Yeah, so I'm going to call it. I'm going to call it and say thank you, everybody, for joining. It's been a fun little adventure. I hope you guys got what you came for. Hope you enjoyed the discussion and the sharing. Sending you all so much love, peace, honor, blessings, respect. Take it easy. Keep the smile alive. And Om Shanti. Big love to all of you. And don't forget to smile. Life's just too short not to.